So bless, Lord, all that they do, and we honor you tonight. We pray in Jesus' precious name. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Pledge of Allegiance. Dave, you want to do the honors?
Thank you. Everybody stand, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, under God, liberty for justice of all.
Thank you, Dave. Recognitions of gifts, donations, and community service to the city. Does anybody have anything tonight? Alrighty, moving on. Citizens addressing the council. I do have a few people to come forward, but Jim Fahey, could you please wait till we have that items on the agenda? So could you please wait, and I'll take a public comment from you at that time. Martin?
He's comfortable with that, so.
All right, thank you.
I'm sorry, Gary, what would you say?
Oh, Martin wants to come forward. Deegan, I think it is.
Is it Mariah? Mariah,
Oh,
Gary.
I'm sorry. It's scratch. I'm sorry. I apologize.
No, you're fine. Take this off. My name is Mariah Ralston-Daragon. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I moved to Hutchinson in 2014 and I live on Monroe Street Southeast. I'm here today because I wanted to tell the city council, especially the council members who don't think face masks are important or helpful, that 4 days ago, a family member of mine went into quarantine. That night, he died of respiratory failure. Some here may tell me that this was just God's will, that it could have happened even if it was just the flu, that it was just his time. The truth is that my family lost a man we all love dearly because this community is not on the same page about the COVID-19 virus. Last week, I witnessed a customer at the city liquor store challenge another customer who wasn't wearing a mask. First, the man said he had a medical condition and couldn't wear a mask. Then he said the virus is a hoax. When the other customer told this man that he was going to call the Hutchinson police, this man said, "They don't care. No one cares." Let me be crystal clear, I care. I want this city council to set an example for the citizens of Hutchinson. Masks are not an absolute fail-safe, but they reduce the chance of infection by 65%. Social distancing reduces the chance of transmission by 90%. I do not accept that this community won't do what it has been proven to reduce the transmission of COVID-19. Wearing a mask is a small price to pay if we can protect each other's lives. That day last week, the staff at Liquor Hutch stated that their management had instructed them not to refuse service to people who aren't wearing masks. Many businesses in Hutchinson are not enforcing mask rules, signage, or the employees themselves aren't wearing masks. Others are doing their best to enforce the mandate, but the Hutchinson Police Department isn't issuing citations to those who won't wear masks or won't leave a business when asked. To my knowledge, people entering city buildings are not required to wear a mask, they're encouraged to. Several churches in Hutchinson up until recently were still gathering in person, not requiring masks, and having Bible studies in each other's homes without masks. To get a handle on this virus, lines need to be drawn. The Hutchinson Police Department needs to back local businesses and start issuing citations. The state liquor stores in Virginia decided in July of this year that they would refuse to allow customers to enter stores without a face mask. It should be that simple. On the basis of Governor Walz's executive order 2081, the city of Hutchinson should refuse service at the liquor store for anyone not wearing a mask, and the Hutchinson Police Department must issue mask citations whenever a business needs backup. If this town continues on its current course, more lives will be unnecessarily lost. Dr. Leah Shroop was quoted in a post on the Hutch Health Facebook page on Monday, and it's since been shared over 164 times. She gave me permission to read it here today. Crazy Monday. By noon, we were on pace to see double the number of people in urgent care that we saw at the height of H1N1. And they just keep coming. Hutchinson's positivity rate is over 30%, 3 times the state average. Friends, I beg of you, if you have COVID symptoms and need testing, please do video visits. Coming into urgent care exposes our staff and uses tons of PPE. We will get you tested. If you're sick, even if you think it's just allergies, get tested. I can't tell you how many people have said that this week and been positive. Stay home, wear a mask. That's Dr. Shroop. My husband made this Facebook post today after we had viewed his father before cremation. I looked at my dad for the last time today. His cause of death is respiratory failure due to COVID-19. This is not a hoax. This is not political. This is the truth. Wear your mask. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Julie Loftal.
I'm Julie Loftal I live at 542 Jefferson Street here in Hutchinson. And tonight I also am speaking on the masks. I saw Dr. Schrupp's Facebook post and Mariah's post about her father-in-law. And I had talked to Mariah, and I just wanted to say that we are a community here in Hutch. And I look at the wearing a mask during this upsurge of COVID to be a community duty. As a community, we pull together to do things for each other all the time, despite our differences. To be in a community means that we understand there may be things that are important to some, but less so to others. Because we are a community, I would hope that we would value each other more than we value our need to prove a point. Wear your mask. Why let peer pressure, self-consciousness, or even personal preference get in the way? If your friend has asthma, would you smoke around them? Of course not. What if they believed that even burning incense in your house aggravated their condition? Would you curb your behavior because you cared about your friend, even if you did not think it really mattered? I think you would. Because we are a community that understands we are only as strong as our weakest members, it's up to us to show this by putting others first. Your right to not wear a mask means illness or death to another person. You may not show any symptoms of COVID, but you could be a carrier. Why not wear your mask and slow the spread? There are many things in life that we do that we don't want to do. As we age, those things become more. Do I want to go to work every day? No, but I need to pay my bills and buy food to survive. Wearing a mask is such a little thing to do to slow down the spread of this virus. It is a small sacrifice as the beds in hospitals fill to capacity or beyond. Medical staff wear masks all day long. I hope you would wear your mask too. I also would hope to see business employees wearing masks at all the stores in Hutchinson. I have gone to businesses where they are not wearing them or have them down below their nose. I leave the store. And I also know about the incident at the municipal liquor store. And that person was told that the employee did not have to serve him, even though he had his mask down below his nose, and the other gentleman didn't have a mask on. I would hope as leaders of this community, you would take a stance on masks. I haven't really heard anything publicly by any council member, and I know there are council members who do not believe in the mask mandate, and I just find that appalling. In closing, I would like us to work together as a community and wear your mask to help slow this virus down until there is a vaccine. I, for one, do not want one of my loved ones passing away. Thank you.
Thank you. I did invite President Jim Lyons of Hutchinson Health to come and speak on what the conditions of the hospital are and what the numbers are. So, Mr. Jim Lyons, president of Hutchinson Health.
Thank you, council members and mayor. I, in preparation for this, did put together some numbers. I think you've heard from others tonight that the numbers are pretty self-evident. But let me just share a little bit big picture and then kind of what this looks like in Hutchinson. So for the state of Minnesota, today there were over 1,200 people hospitalized with COVID-19. That number is double what it was 2 weeks ago. We're averaging over 4,400 cases per day being diagnosed in the state of Minnesota. That's up 142% from 1 week ago. In McLeod County, we have 32 daily, on average, 32 cases daily right now. That's up from 13 1 week ago. And that translates into about 90 cases per 100,000 population, up from 35 1 week ago today. At Hutchinson Health, our daily census for COVID-19 patients has been 1 to 2 patients per day for the past couple of months. We're now at 4 to 5 COVID patients on average per day in the hospital. We're doing more COVID tests per day than at any other time this year. Positivity rate is was running at 5 to 6% at the end of October, just 10 days ago. It's now running 27 to 32%. It is here, folks. It's in our community. It's real, and it is a public health issue. It's not a political issue. It is a public health issue. The biggest challenges that we face right now are the number of beds, but quite honestly, beds aren't the issue. The issue is really, can we staff those beds? And are we able to have enough people to care for those who present to our emergency rooms and present to our hospitals looking for care? Medical surgical beds across the state are essentially full. Every day I look at dashboards across the state to see how many beds there are available. It's in the single digits at times. So if you think about that, the number of ICU beds are in the single digits across the state of Minnesota. COVID-19 is not the only thing that we're caring for in the hospital. We still have people in congestive heart failure, heart attacks, strokes, all other manners of conditions. And this is a time of the year where we start to see influenza and other conditions. The hospitals are full. Again, trying to keep our staff healthy and available to care for you is our number one concern. But these people are out in our community. They're in our restaurants. They're going to the grocery store. They're going to the liquor store. They're in our community. And if you're not wearing a mask, you're exposing them and you're potentially risking their ability to be at work, to care for you or care for your loved ones when you need them. As was referenced earlier, this week, we have seen a substantial increase in demand for acute care, sick care of patients with respiratory symptoms in our clinics. They're either worried that they've been exposed to somebody who was positive or that they may have some symptoms developing, and so they want to be tested. Coming into the hospital or the clinic isn't the most effective way to do that. We can do that with video visits or other methodologies that keep people safe. But unfortunately, too many times the story is, yeah, I'm calling from work because I thought I should be tested, but I had to finish all my stuff. And so they're at work exposing other people. My message is, if you think you need to be tested, you should be able to do that without exposing other people. And until you know your result, you should be staying at home and quarantining. What we are having to do is make decisions about what care we can provide in the community. We are having to redeploy resources to other services like clinics and like hospital services. And that means for people who need other things, medically necessary but elective or deferrable services are going to be put off. Some of those things can be put off for a few days or a few weeks, but sometimes putting them off for a few weeks or a few months becomes critical. And we have to make choices, very difficult choices about what we can do and what we can't do. It's a limited amount of resource that we have. And in the spring, we didn't have a heavy influx of this here. We were able to dramatically help the hospitals in the Twin Cities by taking patients here. We are not in that position any longer. Everybody's full. So it's becoming critical that we do everything in our power to try to manage to the capacity that we have. I want to challenge the council and everyone who's aware or listening to start thinking in increments of 2 weeks. So I shared with you some numbers about where we were 2 weeks ago or 10 days ago and where we are today. If we don't do anything, we can expect the same result, likely to double again in 2 weeks. We will be in serious trouble at that point in time. How will we shift the resources that we have? Physicians, nurses, lab, radiology, infection preventionists, people who are cleaning our rooms and environmental services, all the people who we need to have to make sure that we can care for the people who come to us. We will have to make dramatic shifts. That means people who need care may have to go without because they're not high enough on the acuity chart to get the care that they need. So what are we doing today to change that outcome in 2 weeks? And I challenge us to think not only in 2 weeks, but then 2 weeks after that, what are we doing to try to change the trajectory of this in our community? You heard some good ideas about what are we doing in terms of masks. The science is real. This is not a political issue. It's a public health issue. The cases are real. It's not a hoax. It's in our community. I deal with it all day, every day. Our staff deals with it all day, every day. It will require us to follow the guidance that we've had all along. Wear a mask anytime you're in public, inside or outside. When you're around other people, wear a mask and wear it over your mouth and your nose. It's really important for people to understand if you're not wearing a mask, it's not about your protection. It's about source control. You're protecting other people by wearing a mask. In case you are infectious, you're not spreading it to others. You are infectious before you feel sick when you have this disease. Socially distancing, 6 feet, minimum 6 feet, spread out. It's really, really important. And one thing that I hear from people is, well, I was 6 feet away, so I could take my mask off. It's not one or the other. It's really important that these things, when we combine them, are much, much more effective. Avoid indoor gatherings whenever you can. Limit social interactions. If you saw the decisions from the governor today, you'll see that that was very much a very intentional, very focused effort today to try to really reduce these social gatherings. And some folks that were interviewed afterwards said, well, it's going to make it a lot harder to get together and do this stuff. That's not the point. The point is we really need to reduce these things. Wash your hands. It's a simple thing. We've learned it from when we were old enough to reach the sink. Wash your hands. It's very simple, but it really does make a difference. And like I said before, if you think you may need a test, you should really be quarantining until you have those results. The more you're out moving around, if you go to the grocery store because you might need some things, you're in that infectious window and all of the people that you go by, you're potentially spreading to. So stay home and quarantine. These are not hard things to do. They're simple. Everybody can do them. And it just requires that we all work collectively to do it. I think, the challenges that we all have, and trust me, these are real. I've lost a family member to COVID. I've been there when we've lost people at the hospital. We become numb to the statistics when we hear them on the nightly news every night. 230,000 people have died in this country in the last 6 months, 7 months. We've become numb. Every single one of those is a life. And we heard that tonight. It's a life. It's somebody's grandparent, somebody's father, somebody's aunt, somebody's uncle, somebody's brother, somebody's sister. It's really important that we recognize every single one of these is a life. And we are in serious jeopardy of not being able to be there to support those people who need us when they need us, because it was more important that I went to the bar and didn't wear a mask, or I went to church and didn't wear a mask. These are not difficult things for us to do. They're small asks, and it is a public health issue. As I said before, and I shared in my conversation last night, you know, we accept other public health things as just being the way it is. You can't go into a restaurant, no shoes, no shirt, no service. No shoes, no shirt, no mask, no service. It should be fairly simple stuff for us to do, but we just need to step up and take those steps to do it. It does make a difference. I'm happy to answer any questions that any of the council members or the mayor may have as it pertains to the work that we're trying to do.
Go ahead, Steve.
Hi, Jim. Thanks for coming, and Mariah and Julie as well. Just, Jim, what would you say if somebody's listening that, well, this is only affecting older people that have pre-existing conditions and other health issues?
Yeah, so I think we hear stories pretty regularly of people who are younger, who are impacted. It's very difficult to predict. So I think those are great stories in terms of the generalizations, but when it comes down to each individual person, it's never really clear how severe the case is going to be. I have friends who are my age who have contracted this and who have been impacted fairly heavily by it. I have others who have contracted it and had relatively no symptoms, recovered fairly quickly, and all pretty healthy, no underlying health conditions. So it really varies widely. But I think I go back to the fundamental behind this is it's really not about how it impacts those individuals. The spread is really occurring. So if you're a young person, if you're, pick an age, 25, 30, and you say, I'll survive this if I get it, you're kind of missing the point. The point is you're moving this around through the community as you are moving through the community. So your choice not to wear a mask, not to socially distance, to gather with friends is allowing that to spread to your friends. And then they go visit their family members or they go visit other people, and you can't separate it from the older community who's at risk. And so we really need everybody at every age to be engaged in this fight.
Thank you.
Jim, last night, in my conversations with Dr. Schrupp and you last night, it's just not the COVID, it's the conditions that affect you after you get rid of it that linger along. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Sure, there's lots of stories that we have as people, some people are hospitalized we have somebody that's been hospitalized for weeks. And as they are able to discharge from the hospital, oftentimes are going to other skilled care, or they have to have help at home because the effects are lingering, and lingering not just for days or weeks, but months. We don't know from this disease how long those things will impact people. They could end up with respiratory issues for many, many years, the rest of their lives in some cases. We don't really know what that means. But the evidence that we've seen so far in a 7, 8, 9-month-old virus in this community, in this country, is that there are a fair number of people who have long-lasting effects from this. So it's surviving, it's one thing, but going back to life as normal and life as it was, I think is not necessarily the case for many people.
Thank you. Any other questions for Jim? Thank you for taking the time out to come and address the council and citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, moving on, approval of minutes. We have the regular meeting minutes of October 27th, 2020.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Steve, second by Chad to approve the minutes. Any other discussion on it? If not, Dave,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Chad,
Aye.
aye, motion carries.
Hi, Gary. Before we move on, would Matt want to touch on like the enforcement part of COVID? You know, it's been talked about a little bit. I think there's a lot of confusion on who enforces what and what is enforceable and what's not. Would you be able to touch on that?
Yeah, I can do that. Appreciate those that came and spoke tonight in front of the council. And we've been dealing with quite a bit of phone calls and emails regarding the topic. Just a couple of things too, and this is, I guess, even for the council's knowledge, the governor's order is the minimum standards. Cities can always adopt something that's stricter than what the governor's orders have. I would say that, you know, regarding it's not a requirement to wear a mask in the city facilities. That's not correct. It is a requirement. And if people aren't, we should be notified of that. However, there are certain, we have directed our staff to follow the guidelines that have been given to us by the Department of Health when it comes to enforcement. Generally speaking, they have stated that when businesses aren't following the rules and regulations, individuals should be contacting either the Department of Health or OSHA to report those. They've stated it's not the responsibility of local law enforcement to follow up on those types of things. Obviously, if you find yourself with an unruly customer who is not leaving your building, that's when law enforcement should be getting called. When the question is raised about the medical conditions, the guidance that have been given to us is that we do not have the authority or the right to ask about those medical conditions. And I think, as we all probably know, how that potentially could get used and abused. But generally the direction we've been given staff is to follow the guidelines that have been given to us from the Minnesota Department of Health when it comes to enforcement of that. And once again, I'd like to reiterate, the council can always be stronger and stricter than what those state guidelines are.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chad, for reminding me of that. Thanks, Matt. Moving on, consent agenda. One be done by one motion unless somebody pulls something off for discussion. A is approval of resolution number 15230, resolution adopting assessments for Truck Highway 15 Main Street reconstruction and Truck Highway 15 ADA and overlayment improvement project. B is approval of change order number 2, letting number 3, project number 20-03, South Central Drainage Area Improvement Phase 2. C is approval of resolution number 15233, resolution approving disposal of surplus park and rec department property. D is approval of a purchase of a Bobcat toolcat. E is boards, commissions, and reappointments. Jeff Hafe to Price Board to August 2021, completing Marilyn Huff's expired term. Joshua Camrath to the Price Board to August of 2023. Ashley Gabbert to Price Board to August of 2023. Reappointment of Bob Wendorf to the Hutchinson Utilities Commission to December of 2025. And F is claims, appropriations, and contract payments. Is there anything anybody wants pulled off?
Like D and E, please.
I'll make a motion to approve the balance.
Second.
Motion by Chad, second by Dave to approve the balance. Roll call, Dave,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Chad,
Aye.
aye, motion carries. Steve, D.
Thanks. Just wanted to confirm, in the board action format, it talks about the price being 51,500. But then when you read through it, the information, it sounds like we're trading in our existing model, and with that, it's like a $20,000 credit. So our net cost is 31,500. Is that correct?
Correct. Correct. Yeah, the purchase price is at 51, but that didn't include the trade-in value of that $20,000 piece of equipment.
All right, just want to make sure we're actually trading that in then. So make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Steve, second by Chad to approve the purchase of the Bobcat Toolcat. Roll call, Dave,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Chad,
Aye.
aye, motion carries. Steve,
Yeah, just the board appointments, just a request that in the future, could the board interest forms be included in the packet when people are being, it's on the agenda for the appointments. I know last week we didn't have those. They were provided at the meeting itself. Tonight, we don't even have that. So I just know, seemed like a simple request.
sure, we can do that. I'll request that from Melissa next time.
Okay. And I know Jeff and Joshua, but wasn't sure Ashley, what's her background or anybody?
I know her fairly well. I'll vouch for her. She's good people.
Yeah.
I'll second that. I was with Ashley up at the Leadership Institute through Blandon last year. She works out at Ridgewater College. She's, I believe, in their, I think it's their fundraising portion out of the college. So.
She used to work at the chamber. That's how I got to meet her. Yeah. So
The name sounded familiar. I just couldn't, tap in where that was. So
sure. Very pleasant person. I'm sure she'll fit in nicely.
okay.
Now that you mentioned she worked at the chamber, now I can put the name to the face to the name, I guess.
Well, that's it. Thanks. Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Steve, second by Dave to approve appointments. Roll call, Dave,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Chad,
Aye.
aye. Motion carries. Public hearing, guess it is after 6, so we can go to that.
Correct. I'll turn it over to Kent, who will introduce, obviously, the item in hand, which is in regards to the 2021 pavement management program.
All right, thanks, Matt. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Like Matt mentioned, we're administering the public hearing for our 2021 pavement management program project, letting number 1, project 21-01. Within your packet is a fair amount of information. Maybe what I will do is simply, and maybe Matt can just simply bring up the council items from the electronic version of the packet and share his screen for everybody watching. But the first thing in the packet following the board action form is simply the resolutions that we're entertaining this evening. Resolution ordering the improvement and preparation of plans and specs. Resolution of approving plans and specs and ordering the advertisement for bids. Right now, we are targeting a Wednesday, February 10th bid opening. And that's those resolutions prior to that. Maybe they weren't. Maybe I misspoke. There they are. Yeah. So anyways, those are the resolutions we're entertaining. Then we moved on to the engineering report and feasibility study, in essence, the cost estimate. If you want to just keep scrolling back to the next page, please. There we go. This was the estimate and project scope description that was provided to council when we ordered this public hearing a couple of meetings ago. In general, the estimated cost is, just over $2.1 million. That's based on construction costs of, we are doing the utility work, in essence, the storm sewer work and the sanitary sewer work this fall. That work has been completed. So the construction cost that's being entertained here or addressed here is simply the road work. So it's bituminous, gravel, granular base, concrete curb and gutter primarily, a little bit of street lighting and some landscaping. That arrives at that $2.1 million number. Based on our assessment calculations and what's been communicated to property owners and per assessment policy and rates, we'll be arriving at approximately $387,000 in special assessments. There are no state aid streets on this project, thus state aid funding will not be utilized in any manner or can't be utilized in any manner. And like I said, the utility work has been addressed, so the remainder would be funded through our city bond issue next year, to the tune of just over $1.7 million. Want to scroll on to the next page, Matt, please? What we did is we have two different project construction methods occurring in this project, this letting. We have the reconstruction streets, which is in essence the roadways that were torn up this fall here to do the utility work. So we're talking about Harrington Street, Merrill Street, and Clinton Avenue. I guess the the westerly block of Clinton between Harrington and Church. And then those will be addressed with a partial reconstruction approach, we're calling it. It's more so a full reconstruction in the end, that we are doing a full road replacement. We're doing all the concrete curb and gutter. We are excavating the full roadway, typical section. So we're taking out approximately 2 feet of the existing road bed and then building a new road bed section with new granular base and aggregate, and ultimately the bituminous blacktop surfacing.
Kent, can I ask a question on that? What determines doing it that approach versus
Well, typically what we've done is we've taken a good look at the concrete curbing, and then we also, how that's performed over the years will really tell the story of what the underlying soils are doing. If the concrete curbs are holding up, and we don't like to get into projects where we're doing replacement of over 20, 25% at the most of the concrete curb and gutter, piecemeal. Once the curb gets to that point, that's telling us, that the underlying soils aren't behaving very well. And that's reflected obviously in the blacktop surface also, and how that performs over the years. Then we verify that with geotechnical soil borings. So then we get a good look at what was built, many years ago from a roadway section standpoint. And then more importantly, we get a good look at, what type of soils are beneath the old road section. The other factor, obviously, in this equation for these streets is the trunk storm sewer on these roadways. It basically ripped up, we disturbed, I shouldn't say we ripped up, but in essence, we ripped up more than half of the roadway, installing the new large storm sewer pipe and all of the curb and gutter on one side of the street. So at that point, we elected to address those roadways that I just described with a reconstruction approach. The other roadways, Church, the easterly end of Clinton, and I'm trying to think, I think that's, Lindale. And then we're doing that one block of Lindale to the east of Merrill. Those are being addressed with a rehabilitation approach, which is described, in the next notice that we published. The curb and gutter has performed fairly well. we're not hitting that 20% or so threshold to do a piecemeal replacement of the concrete curbing. Thus, we'll go in, we'll do the spot repair on the curbing after the milling of the roadway occurs. And then we'll go in and then recompact the existing milled gravel, asphalt material, and then put a new 4-inch bituminous mat in on those roadways. That's been our typical rehabilitation reclamation approach that we've done over the years. It's been a while since we've done that approach. We did quite a few streets 6, 7, 8 years ago, primarily up in the northeast quadrant of the community. Since then, we've been doing more reconstruction projects on larger, I shouldn't say larger, but more major collector type roadways, 5th Avenue, South Grade Road. Well, South Grade Road was a mill and overlay, but 5th, Jefferson, 5th Avenue Northwest and such. Does that answer your question,
Yep.
Steve?
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. Keep on scrolling, Matt. We'll just work our way through this. So as usual, what we wanted to communicate in this notice is what we would typically address in our neighborhood meetings. We did not have that, so we included all that information in this notice. So we get into the estimated, not the estimated, but our assessment rates. We get into estimated costs by providing the overall engineering cost estimate. And then as you scroll down, we get into the hearings and process as usual. This evening is the public hearing that's noted there on the very bottom of the screen. And I think we can just go to the next page, please. Obviously, we provide our contact information.
Keep going down, Ken.
Nope, and just briefly here, these are the roadways that are being addressed with the reconstruction approach that were impacted for the most part by the new trunk storm sewer pipe. The exceptions would be the northerly block of Harrington. So Harrington from Linden down to Clinton, and then the very north end of Merrill Street. So basically, a little ways north of the Clinton intersection up to Linden. Otherwise, yeah, the southerly blocks have new pipes in them. We needed to go all the way down Merrill to South Grade Road to get the large pipe down to that intersection. That obviously has flooding issues throughout the years. So that's why that south block of Merrill was impacted. And then if you want to scroll on, simply same general notice, but this is for rehabilitation, reclaimed streets. And you can just work through and maybe just go to the map. Otherwise, it's basically the same information. And like I said, these are the roadway sections that'll be addressed with the rehabilitation construction method. And then I think that is it as far as the information within the packet. All the property owners, as usual, were provided what we call an estimated assessment amount within their notice for this public hearing this evening. I should note, and we had a discussion at resource allocation, that we did not prorate the assessment amounts from a 40-foot width, I guess average width that we've done in the past down to the actual 36-foot width. What we're seeing construction costs, and it was reflected in the cost estimation provided, well, earlier in the packet here, but provided a couple meetings ago. We're arriving at about 18%, a little less than 18%, I believe, as far as the assessments offsetting the total estimated construction amount. So that ultimately might cause issues with our bond issue or the type of bond issue that's eligible to be utilized for this project. We need to get to 20% to do the GO bonding that we typically do through statute 429. If we don't, talking to Mr. Reed, there's other bonding approaches out there. Might end up being a slightly higher interest rate, albeit, obviously interest rates are fairly low right now. So that maintains itself, a slight increase of 2% will still be a very good interest rate at the end of the day. So that's why we didn't reduce it. If we did reduce based on the a proration of the width, like we've done in past years, that would decrease our estimated assessment amount by about $40,000. So take that 387 that we're estimating, or that we're pretty confident will be the total assessments generated, down to about 340,000. If that makes sense, if there's any thoughts on that front. I want to reiterate that construction costs for concrete, sand, gravel, bituminous, those costs aren't going down, is what we're seeing. Unlike costs for excavation and utility work, which we obviously capitalized on by delivering the utility work this fall.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the proration, so glad you touched on it. I guess I don't see why. I understand the assessment part of it as far as the 20%, but we're not even there now. It's really a fairness issue, when we deal with other properties. So I think we should prorate it and then adjust accordingly. And then is it really 36 feet too? I kind of stepped it off. It almost looked like it might be less than that. So just it's kind of
I
raised.
think it's pretty consistent out there, Steve. I mean, there might be some slight variations, but yeah, we inventoried them, and face to face, curb face to curb face is 36 feet on basically all those streets.
Steve, your mic is off, so.
Yeah, it was just rough estimate by stepping it off. So that's fine. But I still feel like fairness wise, we should prorate it. That's just my feeling.
Yeah, and obviously we're working off of estimated, cost numbers at this point. I think this question will be more fully vetted when we do get the actual public bid in February, hopefully, and then then Andy can obviously consult with our bonding consultants. And I agree, Steve. I think I'm just bringing up the issue that I think we're gonna see where we are gonna be short, and I think we wanted to put ourselves in the most favorable spot as possible. But you are right, from a fairness and consistency standpoint. Prorating them down would probably be the best approach, but I think that'll be more fully addressed ultimately when we approve the final assessment roll, hopefully in March or early April.
Well, just thought I'd bring it up now because I won't be part of the council then. So.
No, I understand that, but just
I guess to address that, Steve, I think and for the council and even Kent, I think it's probably appropriate. Well, obviously this isn't the assessment hearing, but I think it'd probably be wise for us to maybe run both those scenarios when we get to that point in time. So,
and then just as for a mention, with costs going up, is it time to consider maybe bumping up the assessment rates, on the fee schedule? So maybe that helps mitigate that. Maybe it's just kind of a phase thing over a few years.
Yeah, no, I think that's on the horizon, definitely, Steve. I think what's really going to tie our hands is conversations, not that we couldn't deviate, but we did have conversations with property owners. There's quite a few corner lots on South Grade Road. So there was obviously, staff had conversations with some of those property owners to figure out the most favorable roadway to be assessed on. We did use the full rate a year or so ago when we had those conversations with property owners. So yeah, those corner lots won't be slighted if it's the full rate, or if we reduce it 10% on a proration based on width. So I envision after hopefully delivering this project, on the east side of the rec center in 21, and then the other streets in 22 on the west side, I believe going into 23, we should give our assessment policy and rates a good review and revise accordingly.
All right, thanks.
Anything else for Kent, or open it up for public comment?
Yeah, I think that's all I have. Just to note, the roadways date back to the 70s in general, all of those streets, with the exception being Sunset, which was addressed when new utilities were put in the mid 80s. And likewise, the utilities on all those roadways date back to the 60s, early 70s, just for reference purposes.
Kent, Steve has something for you yet?
Yeah, well, it was pertaining to a letter that we received, and I don't know, Gary, how you were going to handle that, but they asked that it be read at the meeting. And I was just going to ask maybe that you could explain some of the answers that were raised, but I'll
Steve,
wait. Yeah.
I was going to read it at the public comment portion of the hearing.
All right, that sounds good. Thanks.
Yeah, that's all I have. If you want to open it up for public comment.
Is there anybody there, Matt?
There's a couple residents. If anybody who would like to address the council regarding this project. I don't see anybody right now anyways running. So I'll read the letter, and I guess if somebody changes their mind, they're welcome to come up. So I'll read the letter that was submitted to the council, at least for the record. This is from Jamie Anderson at 854 Merrill Street Southwest. I want the city to look at all possibilities to reduce the assessed amounts that we property owners are required to pay. As far as Merrill Street in particular, I've never had flooding problems that Church and Heritage Streets had. I believe it was not necessary to replace the existing sewer system. More feedback and personal contact with every homeowner should have been sought before any construction began. I do not own a business and don't have a six-figure income. Any reduction in my assessed portion would be appreciated. Is there any state aid that could be used to assist with this street project? Since my street is currently gravel, increased police patrols would provide a financial benefit as people are purposely driving fast and recklessly on the gravel. I ask the city council to ask for more bids and find the one that would be the lowest cost, even if they aren't a local construction company. Thank you.
Yeah, with that, I can work through the letter, and if council has any additional questions, just stop me anytime here. All possibilities, to reduce the assessed amounts, like I mentioned, doing a proration based on width would be one possibility, and I think what was just stated, we'll do that once we have the bids in hand, and the finance department can consult with our bonding consultant. Moving on, flooding problems. Yeah, really Merrill, and I'm not familiar with the exact dynamics of Merrill versus Harrington and Church, but that area in general, has overland flooding issues and backyard issues per se. Like I mentioned earlier, the need to get down that southerly block of Merrill with the new trunk storm sewer pipe was to get to the intersection of Merrill and South Grade Road to increase the inlet capacity at that intersection, to obviously address the flash flooding issues of that intersection during higher intensity events.
I guess the other part of that though, Kent, is that property owners are not being assessed for that, correct?
Yes, that is correct, Steve. Yep, the sanitary sewer work and more importantly, the storm sewer work is being funded 100% by those utility funds. More feedback and personal contact with every homeowner. Yeah, this, obviously we're living during times of a pandemic, so we did not have our neighborhood meeting. We did have one for the South Central Drainage Area Phase 2 project last fall in August, I believe, prior to bidding that project. I think Steve was there that evening. We did have a few residents turn out. We had that outside in the rec center parking lot. Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, we're trying to provide as much information as possible in the notice that we sent out that's within the packet for this project, knowing that we weren't having a neighborhood meeting. And as always, you know, we're not shy about providing our contact information. Everybody's got it and they see it. They see our email addresses and our telephone numbers on every correspondence they get, property owners get from the engineering department with respect to projects. So I think we do what we can, but yeah, we're not going to go door knocking for comments, I guess. Yeah, with respect to income, we'll skip that. State aid, I addressed that. None of these streets are on our state aid collector street system.
And so Ken, maybe just share that those are not eligible streets to receive.
Nope.
State.
Yeah, they're not on our state aid system. Our designated 17 or so miles of our state aid system, which is primarily city collector streets. So they're not eligible to receive those funds. Yeah, gravel surfacing. As far as people driving fast, I think I drove it today. The gravel surface is in very good condition. We'll get a little moisture on it, obviously, this evening into tomorrow. Get some cold weather, and the cold weather stays, which it looks like it might not. You know, the roadway might suffer a little bit in a week or so if the warm weather and moisture sticks around, and city staff will address accordingly. I don't know if Chief Giverson wants to touch on the enforcement at all, but you know, it's any different than any other roadway, I guess. Yeah, it's tough to change some drivers' habits. Yeah.
Well, obviously, I would just recommend if they're seeing issues to make sure they're contacting the police.
Yep. And then, yeah, lastly, I asked the city council to ask for more bids. Yeah, obviously we're governed by the state public bid laws, and yeah, any and all contractors that can be bonded and insured and have a little bit of project history with this type of work are eligible to bid. So obviously we do have some local contractors that bid our projects very competitively, local and regional, and I believe we're going to capitalize on that by bidding this hopefully in February on the early end of the, you know, of the 2021 construction bidding period. So we hope to see a good number.
And state law requires us to take the lowest bidder as long as it's the most responsible bidder. And generally speaking, the most responsible bidder and the lowest bidder are one and the same.
Ken, can you kind of touch on why we want to do the asphalt early in the spring, because that's probably the best time to get the best price?
Yeah, like I said, yeah, by doing the utility work this fall, it sets up for a nice street project for a paving contractor to bid competitively and to they'll look at it from a scheduling standpoint as early season work, where a lot of the times the paving contractors are waiting on the excavation work and primarily the utility work to happen early on in the season, the construction season. And then they get slammed with a lot of work later on in the construction season, midsummer, and then, basically up to early November. So yeah, no, we believe we should be getting a good number, albeit, like I said, we're not seeing construction costs, dropping the same way they are on the utility side of things. So I don't think we're gonna see a 40% decrease like we saw on the utility work, but I hope our estimate is basically the $1.7 million portion of the total cost. I hope that's a little high, and that we see a better number than that based on when we are receiving bids.
Is there anybody else from the public that would like to address the city council regarding this project? Mayor, I don't see anybody that's looking to address the council at this time.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
Motion by Steve, second by Chad to close the public hearing. Roll call, Dave?
Aye.
Chad?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We have two resolutions. We can do them both, Matt?
Yep, if that's the desire of the council.
All right, we'll do both. Resolution number 15231, resolution ordering improvement and preparation of plans and specifications, and resolution number 15232, resolution approving plans and specifications and ordering advertisements for bids.
I'll make a motion to approve them both.
I'd second that.
Motion by Chad, second by Dave to approve both resolutions. Any other discussion? All in favor? Roll call, Dave?
Aye.
Chad?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
I just wanted to add one
oh,
thing,
go
since you had mentioned, Matt, about looking at both, the non-prorated and prorated, just for the people that are there. I don't know if they picked up what Kent was saying, that if we don't, hit that 20% and we have to use different funding mechanism or bonding, there could be a higher interest rate. So there could be a trade-off that way. Is that
Correct.
right?
That's one of our main funding mechanisms is the 429 process, and that's a state statute that Kent noted and it's laid out. A part of that, there's a requirement for cities to receive that type of bonding. There's a requirement for cities to assess at least 20% of a project to the adjacent property owners. And so that's why we have an assessment policy and why assessments are in place. And so obviously if you don't do that, there's other funding mechanisms, but you might have a little bit higher interest rate. But as we shared with today's interest rates, I don't know how much higher that's going to be. So.
Okay, thank you.
All right, moving on. Review of the city snow removal and ice control services. Man, you got good timing, John.
Yeah. Yeah, what's this all about? It's a little early for this business.
Just because you're going to discuss this didn't mean you had to order this,
No, I didn't order it. I'm pretty sure of that. But we did have obviously a little bit earlier start than usual this year with the October 20th event, and one that's brewing even as we speak. What was included in the packet for you to consider was just some minor changes to the policy, mostly grammatical. The one exception was the one that noted was the sandwich board piece that was added, as that's included in the planning zoning ordinances. So that's the primary change. But I did want to take a brief moment to talk about snow removal operations in the city of Hutchinson. And if you would, I have a handout if there's somebody from the press that would want one, please let me know. Also, each of the council members has a copy. But the snow and ice policy, which is the document that was in the packet, what that's designed to do is create the necessary authority, personnel, equipment, and priorities for city personnel to maintain streets and roadways in a manner that allows for commercial and in personal and emergency traffic. We utilize a wide array of weather monitoring processes. Current predicted weather play a key role in decision-making for when to initiate snow operations and then what type of operation to use. There's a bunch of different tools. Probably the one we lean on the heaviest is the MnDOT roadway information system, roadway weather information system. We use other websites and different media to kind of check what we're seeing on the MnDOT site. And every once in a while, even those are wrong, and you just have to look out the window, and if it's white, you go to work. So, but we use this information to plan a response, to notify the personnel, and then whenever possible, to plan the operations in a manner that avoids overtime. Once we do have a plan in place, we'll also notify the police dispatch to let them know what our plans are for the upcoming operation. Since 2010, we've had a snow emergency ordinance in place. Since then, some years we've used it quite frequently. Some years we haven't even used it at all. And generally, we call a snow emergency after 4 inches of snow. We get high winds and significant icing events. What happens during a snow emergency is that on-street parking between midnight and 7 a.m. Is not allowed after the declaration of a snow emergency, and motor vehicles that are parked in violation may be towed. We'll typically call a snow emergency by noon of any given day, but for sure before 4 p.m. And then a decision, I'll work with public works staff and with police department staff to make that determination whether to call one. If we do declare a snow emergency, we have several ways of communicating that to the public. And then the snow crews and the police work together to address any issues and any problem areas. And again, typically not until 4 inches of snow, we have severe drifting or significant icing conditions. Some of the places that we use, we have a snow emergency line, and we also use this for other notifications through Public Works, and that number is 234-5699. We notify local media, and then we have a city notification system that you can sign up, and we'll get the information to you in that manner. I just encourage you to go on the website and look at those. Snow removal really isn't rocket science. There's only two things you can do to it. You can move it out of the way, or you can let it melt. And obviously moving it out of the way is the most common method that gets used, like shoveling and plowing and snow blowing. When weather conditions allow, obviously melting takes care of itself. It occurs naturally. And when the weather is not warm enough, we can introduce some chemicals to suppress the freezing point temperatures and help with the melting process. Basically, salt, sugars, alcohol can be used to suppress freezing point temperatures, and the most common is sodium chloride, same salt we put on our food. Other chemicals are generally chloride-based, but there are also some products that are sugar-based. High sugar content ag products are sometimes used alone or in combination with some of the chloride-based products. Industry-wide for the last 15 years, the trend has been to focus on melting. With the cost of chemicals rising, in some cases dramatically, and because of the potential effects of chlorides, we've kind of taken a different tack, and we've made a deliberate shift to focus on mechanical means of snow removal in order to reduce chemical use over time. And we have shown that to be the case over the last 15 years. We have seen a decrease in the utilization of salt in particular. We use up to about 35 different vehicles and pieces of equipment to move snow out of the way. And we can use some chemicals in sunshine and warm weather to melt the snow. If we do a good job of mechanically removing the snow, it's surprising what nature will do. A good example of this is the airport. At the airport, we do not use any chemicals at all because light aircraft are very sensitive to those de-icing chemicals, particularly salt. But once we're done with snow removal operations, it doesn't take long and that snow burns off the runway. So again, by deliberately reducing our chemicals, we're able to focus more on the mechanical means, and then where we do put our chemicals down is also important. So what we're working on is putting the sand and salt down at decision points for vehicles, like approaching a curve, approaching an intersection, those kinds of things, areas where the driver has to make some sort of action with the vehicle in order to navigate. And those are the areas that we focus on. And again, by doing that, we've reduced sand salt use over time. Pretty much everybody in public works, certainly operations and maintenance, is involved in snow removal and has a role or a route to play in that. All of the park maintenance employees also. And then we take one person from the water and one from the wastewater department. And then we can contract up to 8 different contractors, typically for the hauling of snow. There has been a slight increase in the trend of personnel hours over the last 15 years, and it's pretty slight, but it does reflect the focus on doing more mechanical removal and reducing the amount of sand and salt we use. We have different kinds of equipment. We have 3 wheel loaders, 8 snowplow trucks. We've got 6 light trucks. We use anywhere between 2 and 8 dump trucks on any given snow event, 5 Bobcat skid steer type loaders, also 5 agricultural tractors. And those are used as necessary depending on the operation that we're doing. I want to talk a little bit about sidewalks and trails. Generally, adjacent property owners are responsible for keeping a 4-foot width of sidewalk clear. There are some sidewalks that are maintained by the city on a 4-tier priority system. And a thing to remember on that system is if it does snow again, priority system starts all over again. So it could be, in some cases with back-to-back snows, it could be, a while before we get to priority 3 and 4 levels, sidewalks and trails. Also, private sidewalks are, yes.
So with that, it's just, there's still a requirement to have that 4-foot section cleared. So property owners should think about that if we get some significant snow and knowing that it's going to take a couple days before the city crews get there, right?
Correct. Yes, that's correct. So the adjacent property owner adjacent to a sidewalk has 24 hours after the snow has fallen to remove that to the 4-foot width. And following snow events, we will take a look at the sidewalk system and try to identify any that haven't been cleaned and do some notifications. And if necessary, the city will do the work and bill the property owner for it. We have one public snow disposal site, and that is at the National Guard Armory, just to the north of that. And both the city and private parties are able to use that site. What we do ask is that people work together, because the city does not supply any ongoing maintenance of the snow piles except for what we put in there. And so the private parties need to work together and maintain the snow they dump. This is the only site available for private parties to use. We do have some other snow storage sites, but those are just for city operations. There have been several winters where we've had to open another site. And if that's the case, what we'll do is we'll put a notification down at the armory, and then there'll be a map and an address that people can punch in to get to the new snow storage site. Just a reminder for people at home, plowing or blowing or moving snow onto or across a public roadway is a violation of state statutes and local ordinances, and the violators would be notified. They may also be charged for cleaning up if necessary, and certainly they would be subject to any consequences identified in those statutes and ordinances. So again, do not put snow on, across, whatever, public roadway. Private snow removal contract, the city code does require private snow contractors to be licensed. Roughly 15 years ago, the decision was made to consider private snow removal activities as licensed and did not require individuals to come in and purchase a license for that. However, that does allow us the fact that if there's violations of the statutes and ordinances, that could result in a suspension of the privilege to conduct business for private snow removal contractors. One thing that will happen, even with the best care and caution by the operators, is that there will perhaps be some property damage. And, you know, number one issue out there is, of course, a mailbox. And considering the fact that there's oodles of different mailboxes that people have, we offer 3 options, or the party can take care of it on their own, and we'll reimburse them up to a maximum amount that's set in our fee schedule, which at this point is $275. It's important to remember that we will not consider responsibility for damage unless there's actual physical contact with the equipment. Snow rolling over, ice rolling over is not eligible for reimbursement. I wanted to talk also about our service on private property. We will and have been dispatched to address snow and ice to allow for an emergency services to get to the property. Examples could be anything like police, fire, ambulance, gas leak, or electrical line problems, those kinds of things. In those cases, we may need to go onto private property, and we would do that. Other than that, there are some places where it makes sense for our operations to cross a public or a privately owned piece of property. In those cases, we'll work together to get the consent of the property owner to do that. Just a reminder to call street department number is 320-234-4219. During the winter, the regular hours are 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. And we just encourage people to use the non-emergency line 587-2242 to contact the dispatchers after hours, and they will get a hold of the public works staff. Once we get the updated policy approved, we will go ahead and post that on the website. We do encourage people to use that website and to, in particular, to sign up for the notifications, because that works for snow and ice. It works for other emergencies. We've had water and sewer service announcements on that system. Also mosquito, when we're going to do mosquito treatments. So any questions?
I was just curious, John, if there's been any improvements with equipment to possibly reduce the amount of snow that gets pushed into a driveway. That gets asked, so.
Yes, there are such things. They are almost exclusively, I should say they're not exclusive to motor graders, but that's the most common. They're typically called snow gates. And I know in the past, people have said, well, they do that in this town and that town and this town, but in every case that I've looked at, number one, they don't use it every time. They only use it on a significant snowfall. It significantly slows the service down. And almost every case of cities that use them, they have a tax, an additional tax to pay for that extra equipment and extra effort that it takes to clean the snow up. A lot of times it'll be a sales tax. Other areas it's a fee, or some, it's included in a general levy, but it's increased. So we don't have any motor graders that we use for our snow and ice operations. So the snow gates that are available on other equipment are not nearly as effective as the ones that are on motor graders. So.
Okay, thanks for explaining that.
Mm-hmm.
I think I know the answer to my question, but is the leaf pickup service on hiatus starting tomorrow?
Yeah, I haven't been outside since I came here, but my guess is, of course, yes. We'll and like in the past when we've had these issues, our intent is to, if weather and conditions permit, to restart on a Tuesday following an interruption of service. So that would be our intent, provided that, we find conditions down the line to be suitable for vacuuming leaves. So.
Thank you.
Anything else for John? Thank you guys for the job you guys do. I know there's usually get one or two complaints, but you guys do a heck of a job if you ask me. So thanks, John, and your staff.
I will do that. Thank you.
There was a resolution, we should approve that too.
Yeah.
That we'll have that on our next agenda.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have it on here as an action item. So
Right.
it's obviously
Okay.
getting some feedback from the council. So we'll put it on the next
Gotcha.
agenda.
Thank you.
All right, moving on, unfinished business, entering into a purchase agreement for Third Avenue Southwest site, former Cenex fertilizer plant.
And Mayor and Council, we have Miles Seppelt here from our EDA to kind of follow up from the conversation we had at our last meeting.
Hey, Mayor and Council, there we go. Everybody can see my slide there?
It's good, Miles.
We're good? Okay. Just real quick, I did talk with this is in reference to, an opportunity to potentially develop the lot on Third Avenue, northwest, the former Cenex fertilizer plant. And kind of following on from our conversation from 2 weeks ago, I did talk with the developer, and he was okay with going with a right of first refusal. So Mark Sabor and I, we put something together that it's going to allow the developer to have an exclusive right to enter into a purchase agreement. So he'll have 180 days or 6 months to do his due diligence. And then the right of first refusal, it also sets the price at the agreed upon number, the 351, 329. And then, like I said, the right of first refusal, it'll allow the developer and the city to explore the feasibility of doing this project, but it does not commit the city to any further action. So I think really that's it. I think really all that we're asking for tonight, if the council is willing, first we have to take some sort of an action with the existing purchase agreement, because that's still on the table, I guess. And then if the council is comfortable, we would ask that for approval of the proposed right of first refusal and authority for the mayor and city administrator to sign. So that's it, I guess. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
You know, and Mayor, I know you, obviously there was somebody who did want to address the council during the public comment that you said you would give them an opportunity at this time. So I just wanted to remind you of that.
Sure. If Mr. Fahey wants to address the council, I'd say he should do it at this time.
Miles, can you get off of sharing your screen?
Yes. Let me figure out. There we go. Go ahead, Jim.
Good evening. Thank you. Jim Fahey, 446 Main Street South in Hutchinson. And I just wanted to, in seeing what happened at the last meeting and the tabling of the purchase agreement, it's my understanding that we'll probably be moving forward with something different than a purchase agreement. But I just wanted to remind the council, I think it's my understanding that this decision was really made almost 13 years ago when the EDA and the city purchased this property and for redevelopment. And then of course the train wrecks of 2008 happened and it postponed it. I'm a little cautious when it comes to the approach that's being taken, even though it's better than just totally throwing it out. But the discussion as to whether or not the property should be redeveloped really is kind of a moot point, because that decision was made so long ago. And as someone who is kind of invested in a lot of commercial real estate in the community, we certainly could use the help in increasing our tax base. So to increase the tax base by adding properties is a very positive thing, as opposed to raising tax rates. And for you to continue to serve the community with all these great services that we have, and we do have amazing services and amazing staff, I would like to encourage you to move forward and do everything you can to keep this developer in the mix and not get derailed by discussions for a piece of property that was never cited for a city park. It's always been cited for redevelopment. And for those of us that can remember what this property looked like before the city got involved and took the lead, it was truly a nasty looking piece of property. And now it isn't, and it's ready for redevelopment. So I just would encourage you to move forward and do everything you can as a council to follow through with the decisions that were made, the good decisions that were made well over a decade ago. And that's my comment. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks, Mr. Fahey.
Mayor and council too, I did want to acknowledge that there was an email sent specifically to Miles and the mayor that was asked to be passed on to the city council, and that was included on your desk tonight. I did send an email to that. That's from Sarah Young. And so I just want to make sure that that's acknowledged, that we did receive that and you guys are in possession of that.
I guess I had a few comments and follow up if I can, Gary.
Go ahead, Steve.
Okay. Yep, I agree with what Mr. Fahey said and Miles has said in the past, that this was, the lot was cleaned up for redevelopment, although it was never stated what that redevelopment was going to be. And that's really the question before us, is what kind of redevelopment is it going to be? And so that really can run the gamut. And as Miles noted, you know, in the information, it's got some restrictions through shoreland with height and lot coverage. But then we also have the river overlay ordinance that's in place and, you know, touches on some of that development. We also had the downtown plan that was talked about. So I get, you know, the economic development part of it, but I think we also need to think about the community development part. They're not the same thing. They're interconnected, but parks and amenities are part of community development. And in this, as we talked about, and people came forward last week, you know, this is pretty, that whole corridor with the parks along the river and with the trail are pretty unique. And I think we should respect that. And I even looked back at our branding and marketing report that came out, and the parks and the trails and the river, and you know, were central to how people feel about the community. They're part of our identity, just the whole sensory branding part of it, and recognized by others as well. So I only say that because right now, Miles, maybe you can correct me, but you know, you told me when you met with the developer that it looked like he's going to be coming back with potentially a 4-story building. So it'd be a underground parking and then 3 stories of units above that. So a 4-story building. You look at west from the dam, and at that, and the scale of that is so out of place with the rest of the development around it. It's going to approach, you know, the height of some of the trees almost. And so it'll be the dominant thing that you see down there, and especially as you're going on the trails. There's other places for apartments. We've got the old Burns Manor property. We've got the Sitz property. I was up by on Golf Course Road by Montana Street. There's a 4-acre lot for sale for $165,000 there, just on the very east side of the traffic circle up there. To the west, there's a 30-acre lot that they would subdivide. So much better suited for apartment complex the size of what's being talked about. We have an opportunity to maybe look at a redevelopment plan that fits the site better. And I was looking online and came across some cities that actually do that. You know, it's not just taking the first developer that comes forward with the proposal, but there's really thought that goes into it. You know, and I think about our tagline now, our logo, City on Purpose. Let's be purposeful with this as we look at what it could be. It could remain parkland. It could still have some other housing or some commercial. And I get that the market right now isn't great for commercial with everything that's going on, but that doesn't mean that that's not going to change. If it's parkland, there's been talk about a splash pad. Well, we could have a splash pad of sorts down there. And I kind of cautioned, with the part of the pool, but maybe it's one of those pads that has the fountain spraying up from the ground. And you can see those with LED light systems. So it's really an attractive amenity at night as well as during the day. There's the city of Hopkins, I know that Chad's probably aware of this, but they have a depot along a trail, and it's a coffee shop, and they have sandwiches and some other things, and it's all student operated. And so it's a partnership with the city and the school district and a couple other entities. And, people talk about a restaurant or a coffee shop, ice cream shop. Oh, why not look at it as a community project possibly? And that, we could be a part of in the school districts to develop. And if the market won't do it necessarily, there's other options. And that's where, hiring someone to go through and work with us on a redevelopment plan, has an advantage. If we do this now, we're going to come back in a few months potentially with a plan that's probably going to need a variety of ordinances to actually meet what's required, or variances, I mean. So, and then, like I said, be out of place in scale with the rest of the development around it. So why don't we be purposeful and encourage the developer to look at some of these other sites, but at the same time, hire someone to help us put together a redevelopment plan that really fits. That's it. Thanks.
Could I say something, Gary?
Oh, go ahead, Chad.
So I think this property needs to be referenced as parkland, because it's not parkland, it's green space. It's not part of any park. It appears as if it's park because it is adjacent to parkland, but it is not that. It is a lot owned by the EDA that happens to be green. And so, Steve, I have eaten lunch at that depot in Hopkins that you are referencing, just off the trail. I would wager that to put up a building, not even fancy like that depot is, but you're talking a $2 million deal, to just put up a building and then outfit a commercial kitchen, and then you would have to have somebody to run it. So I don't think that that's realistic, and to put any kind of a commercial building up, I mean, you're talking fairly big bucks. And Miles, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we can work with this developer on what kind of a plan we want to do here. Just because we're approving this agreement today doesn't mean that we're cornered into going all the way. Maybe we could ask him to do certain things, that we prefer. I think this is very much the first step in a 30-step process. And it just gets because I don't know that a developer would even want to get too deep into the weeds without exclusivity, because they could tie up, thousands and thousands of dollars without having anything at the end of the process, and they are proposing kind of a tall building. And I don't know if I'm in favor of a 4-story building down there, because it'd be kind of a monster in that part of town. But maybe they would be open to a mixed use property with a commercial on the main floor and apartments on the top, or, they haven't indicated that they're not open to it. So, could you clarify some of that, Miles?
Yeah, I would just say that, really all we're trying to do right now is just start the due diligence process. And it has to be remembered, that's a two-way street, right? I mean, the developer's going to come across with some ideas of things that he wants to do. And this is also our opportunity to go back to him and say, no, You know, we don't want something that's 4 stories tall. It's going to be 2 stories or whatever it is. It's very much a two-way street. And I think that's all we're doing is we're just going to look into the feasibility of what can be done, what's going to work from his perspective, what's going to be suitable from our perspective. You know, we certainly recognize this is a high profile site and we absolutely want to do it the right way. So I think all I'm going to say is that nothing's been decided and it's still very much a two-way street.
I do like that it's a right of first refusal instead of the purchase agreement, even though we had these outs, but that's a lot cleaner. Still have the other concerns.
And I get that. I get that, Steve. Like I have concerns too. Like I don't know if I am in love with the proposed site plan that we see here today. I mean, it's a big building, and like just because of the things I said earlier doesn't mean that I'm like, hey, let's put in 50 units. Let's put in a 4-story building. But I do want to see that redeveloped. And like I even like your splash pad idea. It's just that gets to be with a $300,000 lot, that gets to be a pretty expensive splash pad all of a sudden too, you know. And is it an ideal spot for a splash pad? I think it would be, you know, but that changes the whole dynamic financially, you know, if just the cost of the splash pad and the cost of the lot gets to be kind of a big enchilada.
I think Miles is going into this real cautiously. So, you know, even though we are entering into an agreement, we still have the out. So I think this is a good deal. And I know Mary Christensen didn't, she's not here tonight, but she did call me and voiced her opinion that she thought that it would be a good deal to, you know, entering into this here agreement with them. So.
This is Dave, but we won't know anything until we see something in drawings and some elevations and what he has, for, you know, what the style may be from that perspective. So until we see those, I don't know how we can really make any definitive decisions from not being able to see anything. So I would certainly like to see the drawings and see what the elevations and see what, you know, that would bring to that area. Also, I think there's across the street from there is housing that is probably aged. I don't want to call anybody's house old, but you know, there's probably some down the road where that could be a possibility for some of the things that people are concerned with if they want restaurants or maybe another fourplexes or, you know, whatever the case may be for housing across the street. You know, so there's a lot of options that we haven't even entertained yet.
That's why we should do a redevelopment plan. We actually did kind of part of that with the downtown plan. Again, if anybody looked at that, that whole area has some planning. Now, could it be updated? Sure. But right now, you know, we know he's going to want 50 to 70 units in there, and that's a 3-story at least, if not 4. So again, why not? I don't think it's a question if, you know, we're going to get something that's a 2-story building. That's not going to happen. And that's why we're just kind of wasting time this way. We could start working on a redevelopment plan. There's still other lots for apartments of this type that would be great and serve the community well too. So, that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
All right. So we need a motion to either approve or deny entering into the purchase agreement, correct?
Mayor, there was somebody who is interested in addressing the council as well, along with Mr. Fahey. So.
Oh, go ahead. Have him come up.
I don't know if you want him to come up specifically, but he has asked to address.
Good evening. I'm Gus Wardell, 20455 248 Circle, Hutchinson. Residential commercial property owner in Hutchinson. Hearing discussions that this would not ever enter the tax rolls again doesn't make me exceptionally happy to hear that that would be a plan. I had been on a finance team when this was purchased to be redeveloped. And it was the intent for economic redevelopment. Yes, it was a pretty broad brush. It didn't say specifically. I do know that there was others that had brought proposals that never came to fruition. And I do think that you don't want to shoo away somebody that wants to spend, $6, $7, $8, $9, $10 million in your community. And I do know that Miles probably has, in their team, have vetted others that maybe weren't good fits. And I think their team brought this forward thinking this was something that had legs. So again, as Jim Fahey had said, this isn't increasing the tax base isn't necessarily about lowering my taxes. The operation of the city is going to only continue to grow and become more expensive. So adding to that tax base is the only way to ensure or mitigate future rise in real estate taxes, both residential and commercial. So as much as feasibility studies and all that sound really, really cool, the downtown plan did have an element to it that wanted to see housing along the river. I think this is in a downtown corridor. There's maps in the city office here that has an overlay of a downtown area. This would be in that area too. I don't know the developer. I don't know, what's happening, but I did get several calls from several different people this week. And I thought, if there's enough people that thought my opinion mattered, I'd come tonight and just give my opinion on what I have to say about this site. So any questions?
Thanks, Gus. I forgot your name.
Thanks, Gus.
No, I knew it wasn't.
I'll make a motion to deny the purchase agreement.
I'll second that.
Motion by Chad, second by Dave to deny the purchase agreement. Any other discussion? Roll call, Dave?
Aye.
Chad?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Entering into a first right of refusal.
I'll make a motion to enter into a first right of refusal.
I'll second it. Motion by Chad, second by myself to enter into the first right of refusal. Any other discussion? Roll call. Dave?
Aye.
Steve?
Nay. And that's only because there's other lots, as I commented on.
Chad?
Aye, and that's only because this is the first step in a 40-step process.
I agree with you, Chad. Motion carries. All right, governance, we have minutes, reports from committees, boards, or commissions. We have the Liquor Store Quarterly Report and Economic Development Authority Board Minutes from September 23rd, 2020. Does Chief Gipperson have anything for us? I've seen him there.
Yeah, looks like he does. So.
Oh,
Good evening, everyone. I don't really necessarily have anything specific to address. I just felt with the police department being brought up several times tonight, if there was any questions that you guys didn't ask earlier, if you had anything, I'd be more than happy to answer now.
Tom, that was one thing I was going to ask you. Is there more calls about people with scams trying to hit the people in town here? I just been hearing a lot more about them. Has there been anything reported to the police department?
It's been a slight uptick, and I think that's just due to the election. just another opportunity for scammers to scam. So now that that's gone away, I anticipate those scams will dwindle. We always receive those calls, however, and I just encourage the public. If you're suspicious about a call or it's an unsolicited call and you're unsure, give the police department a call, and we'd be more than happy to sit down with you and investigate it a little bit. And obviously, if you have been a victim of a scam, we'd like to know about that as well.
Tom, would you want to talk about maybe enforcing like the COVID mask mandate and what that means for the Hutch PD, or who actually enforces that? I know Matt touched on it earlier, but maybe coming from the police department.
Sure. As you said, Matt did talk about it earlier, and what he said was accurate. The state has accepted responsibility for that enforcement, and there are avenues to report that to the state. Now, when they receive the complaint, they may ask us to do some investigation on their behalf, which we would be more than happy to do. As far as the new executive order today, what I told one of the local news outlets is that as far as the hours for restaurants and bars, we're going to continue to do what we have been doing, is try to educate the best we can. If we get called to an establishment that's open past the 10 o'clock hour, we'll go there and again, first try to educate them. If they are just trying to think of a nice way to say this, but if they just refuse to abide by the executive order, then we may take some additional enforcement action at that time. And then kind of the other major part of the executive order today, limiting people at your home to 10 and only from 3 families type of thing. I guess the easy way to say it is we're not going to tell the third child that they can't come home for Christmas. So that's not our job to go into someone's home and enforce that. However, if we're called to a party, something to that effect, where it's clear that there's multiple people there from multiple families, then we may take some enforcement action at that time. If that makes sense.
Yep. Thank you very much.
So Matt, again, with the governor's update today, Tom mentioned bars and restaurants need to close at 10. And then there's also limits on numbers of people. Is that correct?
Yeah, but I think they reduced the, you know, and I printed out here just so in case that was asked. They did set some specific time limits regards to bars and restaurants. They also reduced I think the size of, or the amount of people that could be within those establishments, and that was at 250, and that's now down to 150. And they also had there's also some language regarding needing to be seated, and no more of kind of the standing at bars, playing games, darts, and the what's not was included in there. Yep, and then as Tom noted, there's also some restrictions on social gatherings, and then on celebrations and receptions. That has more to do with funerals and weddings and the whatnot. And I think an important thing to note today was that they talked about those restrictions don't go into effect in regards to the ceremonies, but they go into effect for receptions and parties and the things that usually occur after those events take place. And I think most of that goes into effect on Friday. And there's some other things that get kind of weaved into it throughout the next couple of weeks as well.
So really with our enforcement, again, just so, you know, if people have a concern and if they call the PD, they might get told they really have to call the state. Is that correct then? Or if they call the city?
Yeah, and I'll read kind of what the guidelines that were given to us from the state says. And, you know, the question is raised, should I say something or contact law enforcement if someone near me isn't wearing a face mask? That was kind of one of those frequently asked questions. And they said there are people who may not be able to wear face coverings for a variety of reasons. And you may not be able to tell why just by looking at a person. Unless you are a business responsible for ensuring working and customer compliance, do not confront a person about why they are not wearing a face covering, or do not report the person to state or local authorities, including law enforcement. Instead, ask the person to maintain social distance if possible. Face coverings protect others from you, so the best option is for you to continue to wear your face covering and, where possible, physical distance yourself at least 6 feet from people not wearing face coverings. And then they go on to talk about there's phone numbers to call in regards to OSHA and Minnesota Department of Health, depending on who's regulating that business. And then there's also a complaint line or a file line for individuals to contact. And that's, as Tom noted, that's where when we may potentially get involved is if, we're contacted by the state to assist them and something like that.
So you had mentioned though that cities are enabled to have things a little stricter.
Yeah, the governor's order specifically stated that this is kind of the minimum requirements and that there was nothing that would prohibit cities from being more stricter than what was in that order.
So if we did require or issue a face mask requirement, then would the PD be the ones that would be enforcing that then? If they got.
It'd be, I suppose, similar to an ordinance that would then fall under our guidance that our police department would be responsible for enforcing.
Any comments about that, Tom?
I guess maybe I'll address it this way. If you talk to the court system right now, they're unable to prosecute a lot of things, a lot of other criminal activity. And so a multitude of ordinance violations coming into the court system, probably likely not going to get enforced anyway. So I think there's better ways than writing a citation. And again, the education effort, providing with face masks, which we have in our squad cars. So if we go to an encounter like that and we're able to offer a mask, that type of thing. But again, I caution, and I think it was brought up earlier too, that if someone says they have a medical condition, we can't ask them what that is. And so, unfortunately, there's ways people find around that as well.
And I will say one of the things that we've done specifically at the liquor store, since that was brought up, we provided alternative methods, and the guidance given to us from the state does highlight that you should be trying to make accommodations for guests. And so, unfortunately, with the situation that occurred, most likely what should have happened, and it does happen, is encourage that individual. We have an alternative method for you to purchase. We entered into the online purchasing system a couple months ago in regards to what we were seeing with COVID. And so, we try to provide those alternative methods. And I know we had some concerns with a face mask being down with an employee, and that's something we take serious. And that's something that our director and our supervisors will have conversations with those employees. I would say it's not being done and, to despise the order. At least I would hope not, but that's something that obviously we'll address when it's brought to our attention with our staff and has been addressed.
Matt, I didn't have the opportunity to listen to Governor Walsh's speech today. What did they say about churches?
Nothing was addressed with churches. They're under the current regulations, or the previous regulations that were in place.
All right, thank you.
Along with that, Matt, for the liquor store, they do, like you said, they do offer an alternative, which is curbside pickup. So,
correct.
Anything else for Chief Gifferson?
Just other city facilities. The rec center is open now, right? So are masks still required?
Masks are required in every single one of our facilities, and that they're posted at, as far as I know, I'm just Every facility that I've been in, they were posted, the mask requirements are posted at every single one of our facilities. So, and I can say, the several times I've had to visit the rec center, the signs are there and people are wearing them. Is it 100% compliance? No. I mean, I would say it's probably the same of every other facility that's that people are entering throughout the entire city. So.
Anything else for Chief Gifferson?
Yes, one thing, turkey roundup. Where's,
My favorite subject.
Steve,
I knew it was.
Currently we're just waiting to hear back from the DNR on our permits. We've submitted an application again for those. So as soon as we receive our permits, we'll begin the roundup. But we are, if you happen to live in the Pishney neighborhood, Second Avenue and Dale Street in that neighborhood, we are aware there's approximately 40 or so that are in one group, which presents an excellent opportunity for us to be able to help mitigate that problem. But we do need the permits first.
Yeah, but I think it's important. I think that's an important note to remember to the public. Even when we first looked at some, trying to control this back in, I think, 2015, 2016, they're considered wild animals, just like a cardinal or a blue jay, or you named that maybe running through a public, block or whatever. And so we have to have permission from the DNR. Now, when we were working with the DNR, they had talked about giving us permits to do that on a year in, year out basis. And so that's the process that we're going through, is that the DNR has to bless us to be able to go in there and remove those turkeys from those properties. And that's a kind of a yearly renewal we need to do.
Okay, I didn't know if it was just a standing, number type deal, or if we have to get an annual renewal. With that, please don't feed them, though. I know there's other bird feed around that might attract them, but I actually saw someone starting to feed a few today and commented, you probably don't want to do that because there are a lot more of them around. So anyway, appreciate that.
Chief, isn't it usually when you submit the number, then they'll tell you, or is it how many, a set percentage or something?
So 2017, was that when it was initially addressed. Council adopted I don't even remember the exact term for it, but basically a plan to deal with the wild turkeys, something that we have to have on file. We have to leave a designated number of turkeys in the population, so the people that enjoy them can still enjoy them, and the people that despise them are somewhat happy. So it's a compromise that's required by the DNR. So there is no formula. We're usually given 25 permits. And my goal is to fill those 25 permits.
All right, thanks, Chief. Anything else?
I have nothing. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Mr. Olson still there, or does he have anything?
No, he took off.
All right.
You got Kent or Mark?
Well, I know Mark won't say nothing, so we'll ask Kent.
Actually, today.
Are you really? Yeah. Actually, Mark does have something to say to the council today, so.
Well, he's got to wait his turn now. We got to talk to Kent first.
Ken says he doesn't have anything, so unless you guys have something for him specifically, so.
All righty. Mark, you're up.
Yeah, the only thing I had wanted to mention was just keep in mind tomorrow is Veterans Day, and it's a good time to remember all of the sacrifices that men and women have given us over the years so that we can enjoy so many things. That's it.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. Dave, do you have anything for us?
Well, I did have kind of one question for Kent, and I don't know why I didn't bring it up sooner, is the street lighting. So again, the DOT must not be having much success with the electrical contractor or the subcontractor getting that done unless there's a solution that's forthcoming shortly.
Yep, you hit the nail on the head. It's hopefully coming shortly. Learned today the contractor should be on site tomorrow and the remainder of the week, Design Electric, the electrical subcontractor. So yeah, hopefully everything gets addressed. The lights get back on. The panels, the access panels get put in place. They have a little bit of testing left to do, and yeah, hopefully by the weekend all the lights are on.
Leave it up to me to ask one day too soon.
Now, Kent, with that, when you say access panels, I know down by the Bass Pond, they still have the bases that are there, or when are those going to get installed, or is that the access panels?
The access panels are actually open or missing on some of the bases downtown.
Well, there's a whole bunch of like the clamp on bases.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, if those are to be installed, yeah, there shouldn't be any extra. I can't think off the top of my head where we're missing them, but apparently we must be somewhere.
Yeah, you should go down there. There's a number of them. So
no, that should be getting remedied. They got to put get the brackets that were taken off for the Christmas light decorations. Those need to be found and reinstalled by someone, whether it's the contractor or city staff. So talked to Dolph earlier today on that front. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Kent. Anything else, Steve?
That's all I got.
Thank you. Chad?
I didn't have anything else tonight.
Thank you. Steve?
Just one thing. Maybe Kent's got some comments too on this, but Matt sent out a memo where the county is taking comments on some road work that they're going to be doing on 115 from, where was it? County Road 7 around to the east to Highway 22. And part of that would be some resurfacing, replacement, but then also paving the shoulders. And I was wondering if the council would be okay with submitting something requesting that they pave the shoulders from Highway 7 over to County Road 7 as well. I know there's cyclists, for example, that will ride from the trail and then go south on 115 to get to South Grade Road to come back into the city, and get on our trail system. Right now, the shoulders are all gravel, and so if it was paved, then that would make that safer.
That route that you described, Steve, is taking your life into your own hands.
I thought they did a little bit of paving on the shoulders on the southwest.
Oh,
maybe I'm thinking
on
of
the
it.
south.
Is that what you're referring to from Highway 7 down south of the loose line?
Yeah.
And then down.
There's a little bit where, approaches to businesses are and things like that, but you get past that Daniels building and it's, it's gravel after that.
I think I know what I recall. I think they did a little bit of shoulder paving on County 7, basically the extension of School Road south of South Grade. I think that's what I'm thinking of, if I recall. I noticed that they must have done at some point this summer, fall. Yeah, I think what we'll do on that front, Steve, and I need to dig into it. Obviously, I pass that on to Matt and others just as an FYI. I've had some discussions with the county engineer. Obviously I knew this was coming. One piece of this that the county is looking to accomplish in conjunction with the city is dedicating the very south end of Jefferson Street up to CASA 115 Airport Road. That last, I want to say probably, yeah, it's not very long, maybe 1,000 feet at the most. Basically, adjacent to those homes outside of city limits on the east side of Jefferson there. And then the west side is now in city limits. It's owned by the hospital. Well, it's not Press Homes. It's some other entity that, you know, owns the remainder of the what I'll call the Harmony River property. You know, basically the field to the east of Harmony River. What they want to do is, as part of this project, the entire CASA 115 project that's being entertained or they're asking for feedback on, is do some intersection improvements at Jefferson and 115. That's really what I've encouraged the county engineer to look at from the city's standpoint prior to us taking on the jurisdictional responsibilities of Jefferson all the way up to 115. So yeah, I'm going to dig into what was produced. I haven't had a chance to look at it. I think what we'll do is bring that back to council possibly at the next meeting, and then basically have council provide input on what I recommend for feedback, formal feedback to the county on that front. That's all
You
right.
mentioned, sure, when you mentioned taking over that roadway, the properties aren't in city limits, so right? Or
The west side is.
the west, okay.
The field that
Yeah,
that's
okay,
owned by the hospital, the remainder of the Harmony River property. It's under a
So-
different ownership name. It's not Presbyterian Homes. I forget the LLC that it's now under after.
But
you know,
the east side, those homes are not.
Yep, but we can still take that on as city right away. It'd be similar to, even if you look back to Fifth Avenue, you know, out to Highway 22. You know, there was a stretch that, you know, the far easterly
Yeah.
stretch, there was
Yeah.
no city property on either side of the roadway corridor, but it
Sure.
can still be dedicated as a city right away. You know, there'd be a city right away plat involved.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, thank you.
That's all I had, thank you.
All right, thanks, Steve. Chat. Oh, we did you already, didn't we? All right, Matt.
Just a couple of things, as Mark noted, tomorrow's Veterans Day and city offices are closed with that holiday. Another reminder that we do have election canvassing this Friday at 9 in the morning. I know I think we'd sent out the wrong date and time at first, but it is 9 a.m. And so you can either do that remotely from home, or, it'll be done remotely either which way. So whether you come to the separate offices here at the city or you want to do it at home, you have those options. And then I've sent out an email. This is mainly, I think, for Steve and Mayor. Obviously, Mayor's not here. Going to be meeting on the police station. That's scheduled for November 23rd at 3 p.m. And just to kind of give a heads up, especially since we're talking about elections, Melissa brought to my attention that we're most likely going to be asked to split up our polling places. For years, it's always been everything right at the rec center. I think there's more and more pressure from the Secretary of State down to the county wanting to see that polling place split up. And so what that would do is probably look for us to put 3 different polling places. Rec center could remain as one, but we'd have to look for 2 other potential places. One maybe being the event center, and the other maybe a church or somewhere that could take a large amount of people. So that's something that we could be looking at having to address for the 2022 election. I don't think it's been mandated yet, but we feel that that's probably coming down. I think we found out that we had the second largest polling place in Minnesota at one point. And so I think they want to see that, because I think there's I don't think there's concern, but I think just so there's not some I think they had a couple where maybe somebody dropped the ballot in the wrong polling spaces, even though we've got it clearly delineated. And so I think that's maybe why you're seeing some of this wanting to try to separate that. And I could be wrong with that assumption, Melissa, or I think there's a couple things that play into it, but just kind of give everybody a heads up that may be coming down the road. And we already touched on the new order that came out today. It's effective on Friday as well. So go ahead, Steve.
Mention the PD planning group. If someone else on the council wants to take my place, that's fine. So just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, because that will be obviously a position that we'll look to appoint here in January. We'll continue on with that kind of that subcommittee, and up to this point, it's been Mary and Steve, and so yeah, that obviously position is going to be open. So something to think about.
Yep, I would like to take Steve's place.
So you want to do
Well, we
it
can
this
talk
next
about
one that's coming up on the 23rd? Gary? You do it for the 23rd? This next
I
meeting?
don't know. It looks like Chad wants to Indian leg wrestle over it, so we'll have to discuss it, Chad.
I'm really tall and good at that, so bring it. You can do it. Go for it.
I'm an old wrestler.
All right, I'll send that to you, Gary. I wasn't sure, Steve, if you wanted to get your last licks in with that just over a month left on the council. So,
Well, appreciate that, but knowing that it's going to be ongoing, be good.
all right, appreciate that. Thanks.
Thanks, Steve. Anything else, Matt?
Nope.
All right. Actually, I want to take a minute to address the council and our residents regarding the recent election. Our community has been through many years of respectful elections. This was the first election that I can remember where things were said and done to attempt to divide us. My mayoral opponent billboard was vandalized, and many of those running had election signs stolen. A community member made a false claim about me that deeply affected my family without offering any apology to us. Our city, our community is better than this. Whatever our differences in the political beliefs, we are still neighbors, co-workers, and friends that share a unified belief that Hutchinson being a good place to live, work, and play. There is nothing wrong with a healthy debate about ideas, but when it starts to make assumptions about the character of our neighbors, we go past what is acceptable. I encourage our community to reach out to those next door, have a real conversation. Don't just judge on basis of political signs or what you hear on social media. I believe deeply that the people of Hutchinson are good people. Let's move forward from this election and continue to make Hutchinson a wonderful place. We know it is, and a place that we call home. Just one other thing, please take a moment tomorrow to remember the veterans, and please offer a prayer for the ones that are serving our country now. With that, that's all I have.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Chad, second by Dave to adjourn. Roll call. Steve?
Hi.
Dave?
Aye.
Chad?
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.